Welcome to the Ignited Recovery Podcast, a new way forward for anyone looking for answers but feeling left out. If you've been searching for empowerment, triumph, and purpose, you've found them right here. You won't hear the same solutions, and you're not going to have any excuses to fall back on, because Ignited Recovery allows heroes to rise and become their best selves. I'm Dr. Adi Jaffe, and I can't wait to be your guide on this journey. Are you ready to become an ignited hero? We've all been hearing about the microbiome and how important it is for our health. It's kind of funny, right? Only 10 years ago, we believed that killing the bacteria on everything was the way to go. I mean, do you remember those sanitizer sprays everywhere? And now we're gradually learning that, surprise, surprise, not really, we actually need the bacteria around us to thrive and even survive. The thing is that everybody's been focusing almost exclusively on the bacteria in your body that helps you digest food. And that is really important because if you can't digest it, you can't live off of the nutrients, and then you develop all sort of GI problems and you have to... Never mind. But research has been showing us an incredible connection between bacteria in your gut and your mental health. Seriously. For instance, studies have shown that the bacteria in the gut of an animal can change its level of depression. And more research is coming out showing that the same exact thing probably plays a role in anxiety, depression, maybe even autism and ADHD. Isn't that amazing? So I did some research and I decided to add a probiotic mix that helps not only mood, but also the communication between my gut and the brain. It's called Amare, and their wellness kit takes care of everything that I need. The probiotics that have been researched to provide actual tangible help, and the prebiotics and everything that those bacteria need to thrive and do their work. I've been using it myself for 3 months, and I gotta say, it's really helped regulate my mood and keep me even. And it's helping me feel less foggy too, especially in the morning. Look, these guys really did their research, and this stuff is top notch. If you want to get it for yourself, just follow the link in our show notes and you can join the mind biome revolution with me. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Ignited Recovery Secrets podcast. I'm Adi Jaffe, and I'm back here today to talk a little bit about perspective again, like we have before, but with a really specific slant. If you've read my book, The Abstinence Myth, you know that I tell a story about my experience with women. Probably not women, since we're talking about junior high, really, when I talk about the story in the book. And in the book, I talk about a story where I ask a girl I really like out, and I build up the courage to ask her out. She was one of the most popular girls in our class, at 13 years old. And I build up this courage. I'm standing in my friend's room while I call her house. This is back in the days of a hard line, so it's just like a landline that I'm calling on. And I get up, I muster up the courage, and I make the phone call. I dial all the numbers, and her dad picks up the phone, which is like the worst case scenario. And so I'm like trembling. I can barely get the words out, but I ask for her. I ask for her by name, and he says, "Hold on," and he puts her on. And my throat is getting tight, and my heart is beating in my stomach. And I do the little tiny small talk thing. How you doing? What's your day like? But I just saw her at school, right? And then I ask, will you go to a movie with me? And she doesn't say anything for a second. She goes, I can't. No. And everything gets kind of blurry for me in the moment. And I don't really remember much of the rest of the conversation, but I remember we hung up. And I was devastated, but I couldn't really show it to my friend. So I think we just played it off in the moment. But then the next day, when I went to school, all of her friends knew. This is before Instagram. There was no Twitter. Text messages didn't exist. But from, I don't know what it was, 8 p.m. at night to 8 a.m. in the morning, all of her friends at school knew. I walked into school and they all said, I heard you ask Shelly out. It was this whole thing. And they're making fun of me because she said no. Turns out she was dating the most popular guy in our class. It's not really a good play by me. But that experience was so traumatizing to me. I didn't ask a girl out again until I was in my early 20s. Literally, like, the girlfriends I had after that point had to ask me out because I had completely lost my nerve at the prospect of being turned down and then mocked for like a week or two. And the reason I start out with that story today is I still have that fear. It's just mellowed out and kind of, glass sanded off over the years by other experiences, but it's still there in the back of my head. And I say that because a lot of the people that I work with have similar experiences like the one I just described, ones where the level of shame and embarrassment around social faux pas or mishaps or fuck-ups become so extreme that they end up holding us back from doing many, many other things we want to do in the future because we're afraid of being brought back in a split second to that moment from our past. And I'm going to expand because I had a realization later on in life when I was about 18 or 19 years old. And I guess 19, I was after my severe depression period after a breakup. And I was living in a house with about 3 or 4 other guys, had a band in the basement. We were playing music. My life was going pretty well. But I would inevitably, periodically, every month or 2 months, get into this funk. And the funk would normally happen, again, this is in the day of cell phones existed at this point, but not everybody had them. So this was in the days where like, I would call friends and call different friends, just seeing what they're up to, leave voicemails. There were no text messages back then. I might even send some emails to some people to see what they're up to. And maybe a few hours would pass and nobody would get back to me. And then that voice would come back in my head. See, none of your friends really like you. They were just pretending the whole time. Now you know the truth. You have no friends. You are alone. And I would sink into this ridiculous depression for, sometimes it would last days. But it would lift the moment the first friend would call back. The moment the first person would come back at me with some indication that I was wrong, it would go away. It was as if I had no ability to have perspective in the moment when nobody was returning my call. But then as soon as they came back, my entire view on the world changed, like in a split second. I could have proof that I was lonely and isolated and nobody liked me for 2 days or 4 hours, however long it lasted. But then in a split second, have proof that actually I had a lot of friends and I was all good. Now, this would happen in cycles, like every couple of months to me. And then I remember one day sitting there, having gone through the exact same thing, making some phone calls, leaving people some emails and some voicemails, nobody getting back to me. And I would get really sad and upset. And then this extra voice, this meta voice came over me and said, wait, you've been here before. You've been exactly in this place where you believe nobody likes you and that everybody thinks you're a fraud and all this stuff, all the negative self-talk that would happen in my head. But then you would come out of this place the moment somebody would call or the moment somebody would email you back. So we've been through this pattern, this meta voice of mine, this voice watching over my thinking, just allowed me to see the pattern. This happens, and then you get the call or you get the email back and you feel okay. And it gave me this insight for one of the first times ever in my life where I was aware not just of my thinking, but of the pattern over time. And I said, oh, So odds are this is going to pass as well. And it was the first time that thought had ever happened to me. I don't know how many of you have ever gotten stuck in a negative thought pattern. But when you're stuck in a negative thought pattern, there is no thought that it's going to end. You're stuck in it. And here I was having this thought saying, I'm in a pattern of negative self-talk, but I've been here before and then it ends. So this one will end as well. And that was the last time I had as severe an experience of these sort of depressive episodes around feeling isolated and the negative self-talk around being liked or disliked. And I've used that same technique because I've seen it work for me in so many other scenarios. Again, I say that because many of my clients will be 100% certain that their life is terrible, hopeless, worthless, that nobody cares about them, that they shouldn't put any effort out, whether that means try to have sex with their partner, mend a relationship, leave a post on Facebook, or reach out to me, even if I'm in their support network and they're paying me for services. Sometimes the negative self-talk is so extreme that they feel like even I don't like them. And so I thought it'd be worthwhile to share that a lot of us go through these experiences and there is a way out, and the way out is actually through the recognition that the experiences are normal. It's the perception that they're never ending that gives us the struggle, because without it, we could all be okay having, a few hours or a few days, maybe even of feeling somewhat isolated. We would just do what we needed to do along that day. And that's what I would start doing. I would watch a movie or I would put a TV show on, play some music, and kind of just wait for somebody to reach out. Because I realized it wasn't actually about me. It was about something else. People were busy. People were not paying attention to the phone. Maybe they just didn't want to talk in that moment. And every once in a while, that would just happen to a few of my friends at the same time. And I was getting caught up thinking it somehow had something to do with me. It was a huge realization for me at the time, and something that I hold on to now whenever I get caught in negative thought patterns. Because it still happens. It just happens much more rarely. It passes much more quickly. And I'm able to share with my support network, like my wife and people close to me, that it's happening in real time. And almost inevitably, every once in a while, I'm actually right, and the people that I think don't like me. But most times, it passes and I find out it was all in my head. So I don't know if you have something like this happen to you. I don't know if you get stuck in thought patterns that are not serving you, and you find that they keep reoccurring over and over and over in your life. And if they do, I challenge you to point out the pattern to yourself. Don't run away from it. Don't try to numb out the fact that you are aware that this pattern exists. Pay attention to it. Pay attention to it and pay attention to the way it normally plays out. And I can almost guarantee that it doesn't play out as extremely and as terribly as you fear that it might. And if I'm right, then use that knowledge the next time. Use that knowledge to let yourself know that the other shoe is not dropping, that the light's going to come through and the day's going to get better and you're going to get past it. And your only job is to find the tasks to do, the things to do, the ways to continue moving forward in momentum until the light shines. I hope this was useful. And if it was, do me a favor, screenshot this, tag me, let me know what it is, or DM me what those negative thought patterns are that you've experienced and what you've noticed now that you've thought about it this way, about the pattern in which they resolve. Remember, you already know all of the solutions. You're just afraid sometimes that they might not work. So pay attention, play the movie through, look at what has happened in the past, and let me know what you've realized. Thank you all so much for paying attention and listening. I will see you next week.
Thank you for tuning in to the Ignited Heroes Recovery Podcast. I really hope you found the information here useful and that we'll see you back here next week. And look, I want to make sure that this podcast is the most useful it can be for you So please let me know by emailing info@ignited.com if there are any specific topics or questions you'd like to have addressed. As usual, if you like this episode, I would love for you to leave us a 5-star review and rating. Thanks, and see you next week.